nonsense. The publisher of allsyracuse.com. Mike joining us now. Always great to have you on, Mike. How are things?
Things are going pretty well. How are you?
We're great. So we're talking about Cayenne Anthony. You are our recruiting expert. So have you heard anything? And can you kind of lay out for us what kind of chance you think Syracuse has in this recruitment?
Well, he's on campus right now. So, but as far as where Syracuse stands in the recruitment, I certainly think they're one of the top options. If you look at some of the schools that are involved, Syracuse obviously being one of them, Indiana, another one that's been heavily involved. A lot of it has to do with relationships attached to his father because, Indiana's head coach, Mike Woodson, Carmelo played for in New York with the Knicks. So, and then obviously his connections to Syracuse. That seems to be playing a role to some extent in Cayenne's recruitment. So, that's something I think to keep in mind. Now, the fact that Jim Boeheim isn't still the head coach and it's someone else, I think there's a little plus and a little negative there in that we know Carmelo absolutely loves Coach Boeheim, right? He thinks the world of him, will defend him to the ends of the earth. But at the same time, I think Coach Autry's style will fit what Cayenne wants to do and potentially be more attractive to him, especially in terms of how they can develop him to get ready for the NBA, which we know is every high school recruit's goal. So long story short, I think Syracuse is heavily involved. I think they're going to be involved right to the end. I think whenever he decides to trim his list and, set a final 3 or a final 5 or whatever it is and make an announcement, Syracuse will have a hat on the table. And, I think they've got a real good shot this weekend to sort of put themselves at the forefront of the recruitment because I think a lot of people kind of assume that they were already there. But I think that's more of an assumption because of his father rather than what the kid is actually thinking.
Do you think if it is Syracuse, they go through all those theatrics, though, of hats on the table, or do you think it's just a quick decision if it's Syracuse?
I mean, it could go either way, but, man, if I was him, I'd do the hats on the table. Why not? Have a little fun with it. Everyone else does the hats on the table thing. The one thing I would advise is if you're going to do the hats on the table, don't do the grabbing one hat, just kidding, and then grab another hat. Don't do that. That's a little tacky in my opinion. But, if he wants to go through and do an announcement because a lot of other people do it and a lot of his friends do it, then, go for it. The other thing I think with getting a guy like him, if Syracuse does land him, is he's very well respected in the AAU circuit with a lot of elite recruits, so I think he could actually benefit Syracuse because of his ability to help attract other talent to Syracuse.
Bring some other people with him. Can you give us an idea of just how good he is? I mean, I know he's considered a top 100 talent. Some may say, how much of that is because of his last name. Talk to us a little bit about his skill set and where he kind of fits into that top 100 picture for recruits.
Yeah, I think early in the recruiting cycle, he was on the radar because of the name, but the more he's played and the more he's developed, you can see a lot of those skills and how they translate to the high major level. Specifically, his ability to shoot the ball. Kind of early on, he was a shooter, but not necessarily a shot creator. He's gotten much better at that. And, he says that Carmelo always tells him, don't let anyone get you off your spot. And we know that Carmelo had his certain spots on the floor, and he was so good at getting to those spots. And, Cayenne has developed a little bit of that as well. And he's kind of a shooting guard type of prospect, a 6'4", 6'5" prospect that translates to a shooting guard. But I think he's still growing and has the potential to develop into a 3. But right now he's going to be a 2. He's going to be a scorer. He's going to be a good outside shooter and someone that's developing on the defensive end as well.
Mike, you've been doing this a long time with the recruiting game. Would you say it generally helps in a recruitment when there is a family connection to a school, or as Paulie was saying, maybe this kid just wants to go somewhere else and not have to live up to that hype and live up to that legacy and kind of blaze his own path? Do you find that it helps or hurts, overall in recruitments when there's that family connection?
Well, for football, I can tell you it seems to help everyone else other than Syracuse, because Syracuse does not have a good track record at getting legacy recruits. Now, they changed that a little bit by getting David Wollaba as a transfer, but largely, if you look at some of the guys, George Rooks' kid went somewhere else. Marvin Harrison Jr., you guys were just talking about, he went somewhere else. So a lot of prominent former Syracuse players that have had recruits that are Power 5 caliber haven't come to Syracuse. On the basketball standpoint, they've had some of those. You guys mentioned some of them earlier with the Brandon Trishes and Andy Routens, and so I do think that can help you. It certainly can hurt you because other schools are going to say, do you really want to follow in those footsteps that have all that added pressure? But at the same time, these kids have so much confidence in themselves that, I don't think that's really going to scare him away. I think ultimately what it's going to come down to is, style of play and where he thinks is the best opportunity for him to not only be successful as far as the team winning, but also developing him to get ready for the NBA. Certainly having that relationship with Carmelo and Jerry playing with Carmelo and those connections will help with, the comfort level in terms of Carmelo sending his son to play for certain coaches, but he's got relationships, as I said, with Mike Woodson at Indiana. So ultimately, I think it's going to come down to program fit and all of those things. I
realize this is some speculation that I'm asking you for, but how long do you think the recruitment goes on for? When do you think he'll make a decision?
Well, if you're Syracuse, I hope he makes one within a couple of days after this visit, right? Because that would obviously be very good news. But we haven't heard anything that anything is necessarily imminent, but I think he's taking his official visits now with the hopes that will give some clarity and, perhaps within the next couple of months make a decision. But we don't have any definitive time frame. It's a lot of kids wait until the spring or the summer before their senior season, which would, put us somewhere in the, I'd say, March to June, July timeframe. That's the most common with recruits because, they start getting some more exposure with AAU and some other programs come in. I don't know that he needs to wait for other programs to come in given the schools that are involved with him right now, but we haven't heard anything definitive as far as, it's definitely coming within the next couple of weeks or anything like that.
All right, let's turn our attention to this current team. Paulie and I went through the schedule yesterday, and obviously it's very early, but we took a stab at a record. We came up with 9-12. We went game by game. It was 9-12 or 19-12. Sorry, we came up with 19-12. Is that about what you're thinking? What is your your prediction / your expectations heading into this season?
Not ready to answer that.
I guess not. We have lost Mike. He didn't like the question.
Oh, there I apologize. I'm silly.
Okay.
That was an issue with my phone. I'm sorry.
No worries.
So I think that's a fair assumption right now when you look at the schedule. Obviously, a lot of things can change between now and then. No one expected Louisville to be the dumpster fire that they were last season. So going into last year, I think everyone looked at that as a potentially difficult game for a lot of teams and ended up being one of the easier games on most people's schedules. So there's a lot of things that are going to be determined between now and when the end of the season hits. But I think Syracuse fans should expect that they're a tournament team and hovering somewhere around 20 wins. And you know what? If you can sneak up on a couple of people and catch a couple of people off guard and get that up to 21-22 and be safely in the tournament, even better. But there's so many question marks with how do all the new faces meld together? What is Adrian Autry like as an in-game coach that we don't know how he's going to make certain decisions, substitution patterns, all of those things. Just a lot of question marks. So it's hard to project, I think, much higher than that unless you just have a lot more confidence and know a lot more information, I guess, than perhaps we do. But, it's hard to predict things when there's so many question marks. So I think somewhere around being a bubble team is probably the safest way to go right now.
Right. That's what we did yesterday. We didn't pick one upset for Syracuse, and that would be a true upset. And we got
and they'll probably get one or two of those, and they might get one or two that they lose that they shouldn't. You wouldn't expect them to lose. That's kind of normal what happens throughout the season. But if they can minimize losing the games you're not supposed to lose and, maximize pulling off the upsets, then that makes you a pretty good team. And then, at that point, are they really upsets? So I think they've got potential to be pretty good and to be a tournament team somewhere in the 4 to 8 seed range. But a lot of things have to come together that we just don't know right now.
Mike, there's been a lot made about the guard position, obviously with Judah and JJ as the starting backcourt. And, people have wondered about, who's the first guard off the bench? How much do you expect, other guards to play, given the fact that JJ and Judah are probably going to be their best players? How much do you think they're going to use a 3-guard lineup? Can you answer some of those questions with what your expectation is about who the first guard off the bench is, how much those guys will play, how much they'll use 3 guards in a rotation on the floor at one time?
Yeah, I do think they're going to use Chance Westry as the small forward in some situations because, he's too good to keep off the floor, assuming he's, completely healthy. He's had some knee issues in the past, but if he's ready to go and all indications are that he is, then, I think one of your best lineups is having those three on the floor because you've got three ball handlers, three guys that can run the offense, three guys that can run a fast break, and that gives you a lot of versatility in terms of how you attack from an offensive standpoint. So, I think you're going to see some of that. I think those are going to be the three guards that you see the most on the floor. Now, I do think you'll see guys like Kyle Cuff and, Justin Taylor can kind of come in and play either the two or the three, so you'll have some options there. And Red says they're going to play more guys than they have in the past. So does that mean that Judah's and JJ's minutes go from what we would expect, 35-plus down to 30, 31, and that gives a couple guys an extra few minutes here and there? I think that's fair to assume based on the roster construction in which Coach Autry has said, but some of that we just don't know until we see it play out in real time.
All right, Mike, one football question before we let you go. Do you have any early thoughts on Syracuse, Virginia Tech next Thursday, which is an enormous game, obviously, for this season, for this coaching staff, for this program in general?
Yeah, I think the bye week comes at the perfect time to prepare for that. Now, Virginia Tech has a bye week as well, and they're coming off perhaps their best performance of the season in a big win, and so they've got some confidence, but they still are a team that has made a lot of mistakes. Teams have been able to move the ball against them. And if you're Syracuse and you're looking for an opportunity to get right, this is the perfect chance coming off of a bye to reset yourself mentally and physically and go against a team that is far less in terms of its talent level than what you've faced the last 3 weeks. So if you're Syracuse and you're bound to determine that last year and the way that the season ended with those 5 losses in a row, 6 of the last 7 games, including the bowl game, is not the norm, and that was just an anomaly because of injuries, this is the exact opportunity that you could want to try to prove that. And, I think if they're going to get back to a bowl game, I think this is one of those games you got to have. I think this in Boston College gets you to 6-3, and then any of the games you win beyond that, not to say it's gravy, but gives you an opportunity to have a really good season. So start to build up some confidence by winning this game and see if you can turn things in the other direction. Yeah,
certainly take some of the pressure off if they can get these next two, no doubt about that. Mike, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the weekend, enjoy the bye week, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right, sounds like a plan.